Hey guys, tonight we're walking through a world where grocery shopping wasn't a race against time or a battle with self-checkout machines. We're talking about the 1950s, when shopping for food meant something different entirely. It meant conversation with people who knew your name. It meant taking your time, choosing carefully, and carrying your purchases home in brown paper bags that smelled faintly of fresh bread and possibility. Before barcodes, before frozen dinners in every aisle, before you could buy strawberries in January, there was a slower, warmer way of filling your pantry, a way that felt less like a chore and more like a ritual woven into the fabric of neighborhood life. Before we step inside, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these quiet trips into the past, where history feels close enough to touch. Thank you for being here, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I know someone out there is settling in at midnight with a cup of tea, and someone else is listening while the morning light spills across their kitchen table. Now dim the lights if you'd like. Switch on a fan for that soft hum. Wiggle down under your blanket and get comfortable. Really comfortable. The kind of comfortable where you're not moving for the next hour unless absolutely necessary. Because tonight we're exploring grocery stores where the butcher wrapped your meat in white paper and tied it with string, where the produce was whatever was in season and the cashier knew your mother by name, where shopping took time, not because the lines were long, but because people stopped to chat, to ask about your family, to recommend a cut of beef or share a recipe, where the floors were worn smooth from decades of footsteps, and the air smelled like coffee beans and sawdust, and the faint sweetness of ripe fruit. Have you ever wondered what it really felt like to push a metal cart down aisles that weren't yet flooded with 10 brands of the same cereal? What did it sound like when the cashier rang up each item individually, calling out prices in a steady rhythm? How did families decide what to buy when budgets were tight and waste wasn't an option? What did it mean to shop local, not because it was trendy, but because that was simply where the food was? Could you navigate a grocery store where nothing had nutrition labels, where you couldn't scan a barcode to check the price, where knowing your grocer personally was the only way to get the good cuts of meat? Well, congratulations. It is 1955. The morning is bright and cool. Your shopping list is written in pencil on the back of an envelope. The neighborhood grocery store is 3 blocks away, and inside someone is already sweeping the floor, restocking the shelves, and brewing a fresh pot of coffee for customers who might want to linger. The day is just beginning, and so is your weekly trip to buy food the old-fashioned way, when shopping meant something more than just filling a cart. The grocery store sits on the corner where it has always been, a low brick building with wide front windows displaying pyramids of canned goods and hand-lettered signs advertising this week's specials. It is not part of a chain. It does not have a corporate logo plastered across the awning. It simply has the owner's name painted above the door in fading letters, a name everyone in the neighborhood knows. You approach on foot because it is close enough to walk to, close enough that your mother sent you here as a child with $1 and a list, trusting you would make it there and back safely. The sidewalk in front is swept clean every morning. A wooden bench sits beside the entrance, where elderly neighbours sometimes rest their shopping bags and catch their breath before heading home. This is not just a store. It is a landmark, a gathering place, a cornerstone of daily life that everyone depends on without thinking twice about it. The bricks are warm in the afternoon sun, soaking up heat that radiates gently as you pass. The windows are spotless, cleaned every few days by someone who takes pride in presentation, who understands that first impressions matter even for something as ordinary as a grocery store. Through the glass you can see movement inside, the grocer stocking shelves, a customer browsing the canned vegetables, the cashier straightening the counter. It looks inviting, welcoming, alive with quiet purpose. The awning above the door is striped canvas, red and white, faded slightly from years of weather but still sturdy, still providing shade on hot days. Underneath it, the bench has been there so long that the wood is worn smooth, carved with initials from children decades ago, polished by countless pairs of trousers and skirts settling down for a moment of rest. Old Mrs. Patterson sits there sometimes, waiting for her daughter to finish shopping, fanning herself with a folded newspaper, watching the world pass by with the patient contentment of someone who has nowhere else to be. You pause at the door, looking up at the name painted there. Maybe it says Miller's Market, or Johnson's Grocery, or Schmidt's Fine Foods. Whatever it says, it has been there long enough to become part of the neighbourhood's identity, a reference point for giving directions, a place name that appears in stories and memories, a fixture so permanent that imagining it gone feels impossible, like imagining the street itself disappearing. Inside, everything will be familiar. The same layout you have memorised through repetition, the same faces behind the counters, the same smells and sounds that signal home, safety, routine. This is not a place you discover. It is a place you return to week after week, year after year, until shopping here becomes less a task and more a rhythm, woven into the fabric of your life. Other people are arriving too. A young mother pushes a stroller up to the door, struggling slightly with the weight, and you hold it open for her, and she thanks you with a tired but genuine smile. An older man in a hat and suspenders nods as he passes, heading inside with his own shopping list folded in his shirt pocket. A delivery truck idles at the curb, the driver unloading crates of produce, calling out a greeting to the grocer who has stepped outside to inspect the shipment. Everyone here knows their role, their place, their part in the daily choreography of neighbourhood commerce. This store is not glamorous, it is not modern, but it is reliable, and in the 1950s, reliability is worth more than flash. You step toward the door, ready to go inside, ready to begin the weekly ritual of filling your cart and your pantry, ready to be part of something ordinary and essential and quietly, deeply good. The door swings open with a cheerful jingle from the bell mounted above the frame, announcing your arrival to anyone within earshot. The sound is bright, welcoming, unmistakable. Inside, the air shifts immediately, cooler than the street, carrying the layered scents of 100 different things. Fresh bread from the bakery counter, ground coffee from the bulk bins, the earthy smell of potatoes and onions piled in wooden crates, the faint metallic tang of the meat counter in back. The floor is worn linoleum, scuffed and faded in the places where customers have walked most often, creating a map of decades of footsteps. Overhead, fluorescent lights hum softly, casting a steady glow across shelves stocked neatly but not excessively. There are no towering displays, no promotional end caps screaming for attention, just rows of goods arranged with care, waiting patiently to be chosen. The bell's jingle fades into the ambient sounds of the store, the soft murmur of conversation, the rustle of paper bags, the distant thunk of the butcher's cleaver meeting the cutting board. Someone laughs near the front counter. A child asks their mother if they can have cookies. The grocer calls out a greeting without looking up from the box he's unpacking, recognizing you by the sound of your footsteps or the time of day, or simply by instinct developed over years of watching his customers come and go. You pause just inside the threshold, letting your eyes adjust to the softer indoor light, letting the coolness settle over your skin. It feels good after the walk here, after the brightness and heat of the sidewalk. The air smells complex, layered, alive. Bread dominates, warm and yeasty, mingling with the sharper, bitter richness of coffee. Underneath that, you catch the green, slightly damp scent of fresh produce, the sweetness of ripe bananas, the tang of citrus. From the back comes the faint smell of raw meat, clean and cold, mixed with the sawdust the butcher scatters on the floor to keep things tidy. The linoleum beneath your feet is a pattern of tiny squares, Once bright and glossy, now dulled to a soft matte, finished by years of traffic. In some spots, near the door and around the checkout counter, the pattern has worn away entirely, leaving smooth patches where the original colour is barely visible. You can see the history of the store in that floor, the evidence of thousands of trips, thousands of customers, thousands of ordinary errands that have left their mark. The fluorescent lights hum steadily, a sound so constant you stop noticing it after a few moments, but it is there, a gentle electrical vibration that fills the space like a presence. The light itself is even, not harsh, designed to show products clearly without glare or shadow. It makes everything look clean, orderly, dependable. The shelves stretch out in neat rows, each one labelled with hand-painted signs hanging from the ceiling. Canned goods, baking supplies, breakfast foods, household items. The labels are simple, straightforward, no nonsense. This is not a store that tries to confuse or overwhelm you. It wants you to find what you need quickly, efficiently, so you can get on with your day. At the front, near the registers, a display table holds this week's specials. Canned tomatoes stacked in a pyramid, boxes of laundry soap arranged in a grid, a basket of apples with a sign reading 29 cents a pound. The grocer has arranged everything carefully, knowing that presentation matters, that a neat display suggests quality and care. You take a breath, feeling yourself settle into the familiar rhythm of shopping here. This is a place you know, a place that knows you. And as you reach for a cart and begin moving deeper into the store, you feel a quiet sense of belonging, the kind that comes from being part of something steady and good and built to last. You pull a metal shopping cart from the small row near the entrance, and it rattles slightly as the wheels settle into motion. These carts are smaller than the ones you would use today, narrow and shallow, built for modest weekly hauls rather than bulk, shopping trips. The metal is cool under your hands, the handle slightly worn from use. The basket is wire mesh, open enough that you can see everything you place inside, which somehow makes you more thoughtful about what you choose. There are no cup holders, no phone mounts, no child seats with safety straps. Just a simple frame designed to carry your groceries from aisle to aisle, and then out the door. Pushing it feels satisfying in a way that is hard to explain. The wheels click softly against the floor seams. The cart moves with purpose, steady and reliable, a small but essential tool in the ritual of shopping for food. The cart's wheels are solid rubber, not the plastic casters that will come later, and they make a particular sound as they roll across the linoleum, a soft rhythmic clicking that mingles with all the other sounds of the store. You have heard this sound your whole life, every time you've been here, every time your mother pushed a cart with you trailing behind, every time you've done this errand yourself. It is the sound of shopping, as familiar as the jingle of the doorbell or the ring of the cash register. The basket itself is made of thick wire bent and welded into a grid pattern, painted a utilitarian grey that has chipped and worn in places, revealing the bare metal underneath. The corners are reinforced, sturdy, built to withstand years of use. When you place something inside, a can of soup or a box of cereal, it settles with a soft metallic clink, resting on the wire mesh where you can see it clearly, where you can keep track of everything you're buying, where nothing can hide or be forgotten. The handle is worn smooth, where thousands of hands have gripped it. The paint rubbed away to expose the metal beneath, warm now from your palms. It fits your hands comfortably, the right height, the right width, designed for human use rather than engineered for efficiency or profit. Pushing it requires just a little effort, a gentle resistance that makes you feel engaged, present, aware of the task at hand. There is something honest about these carts. They do not pretend to be more than they are. They do not offer conveniences you do not need. They simply hold your groceries, transport them from shelf to checkout, and then release them into your arms when the shopping is done. In their simplicity, there is a kind of clarity, a reminder that the purpose here is straightforward: to gather food, to bring it home, to feed your family. You guide the cart into the first aisle, the wheels responding smoothly, obediently. The motion is familiar, comforting, a small physical act that signals the beginning of the shopping ritual. Your list is in your pocket or your purse, written in pencil on whatever scrap of paper was handy this morning. You do not need to consult it yet. You know this store well enough to navigate by instinct, starting where you always start, moving through the aisles in the same order you always follow, a pattern so ingrained it feels less like a decision and more like muscle memory. The cart moves with you, an extension of your purpose, a companion in this ordinary task. It will hold what you need, it will carry what you choose, and when you are done, when every item has been checked off your list and paid for and packed, you will return it to its place near the door, ready for the next customer, ready to begin the cycle again. The produce section is not refrigerated. Everything sits out in wooden bins and wicker baskets, arranged by type and season. Apples are piled high in the fall, their skins glossy and cool to the touch. Tomatoes arrive in summer, still warm from the sun, their scent rich and green. In winter, the selection narrows to root vegetables, sturdy cabbages and citrus, shipped in from warmer states. There are no strawberries in December, no asparagus in January. The produce you see is what the earth is offering right now, and that limitation feels less like a restriction and more like a rhythm you have learned to follow. You pick up each piece of fruit carefully, turning it in your hands, checking for bruises, feeling its weight. The grocer does not mind. In fact, he expects it. Quality matters here, and everyone knows the difference between a good apple and one past its prime. The bins are old, built from slats of wood that have darkened with age and absorbed the faint smell of earth and fruit and time. Some are stamped with the names of farms or distributors, faded letters that tell stories of where this food has travelled from. The wicker baskets are woven tight, their handles worn smooth from being lifted and carried and set down again, day after day, season after season. You approach the apples first. They are local, brought in from orchards a few counties away, and they still carry a hint of the cold morning air in which they were picked. The skins are not waxed or polished. They are natural, slightly matte, dusted faintly with the residue of the trees they grew on. You choose one, lift it, feel its weight, its firmness. A good apple is heft without being heavy, gives just slightly when you press your thumb against it, releases a faint fruity scent when you bring it close to your nose. This one passes the test. You place it in your cart and reach for another. Nearby, potatoes sit in a large wooden crate still flecked with soil, their skins rough and earthy. No one has scrubbed them. No one has bagged them. You scoop a few into a paper sack, weighing it in your hand, estimating whether this will be enough for the week or whether you should add one or two more. The potatoes are cool, solid, real. They smell like dirt and storage cellars and the dependable sustenance they represent. Onions are piled in another bin, their papery skins whispering softly when you touch them. Yellow onions, mostly, with a few white ones tucked in at the edges. You choose 3, checking each one for soft spots, for signs of sprouting, for any indication that they are past their prime. The grocer stands nearby, restocking the lettuce, and he glances over, nods approvingly at your selections. You have a good eye, he says, and you thank him, pleased by the small compliment. The citrus arrives in winter. Crates of oranges and grapefruits shipped up from Florida or California, bright spots of colour against the more muted tones of root vegetables and winter greens. You pick up an orange, feel its dimpled skin, press gently to test its freshness. It is firm, heavy with juice, and when you lift it to your nose, the scent is bright and clean, a promise of sweetness and vitamin C on cold grey mornings. In spring, the bins fill with tender greens, lettuce and spinach, radishes and green onions, all of it fresh and crisp and alive. In summer, tomatoes dominate, red and ripe, their scent so strong it fills the entire produce section, mingling with the sweetness of melons and the green freshness of cucumbers. Fall brings squash and pumpkins, apples and pears, the harvest bounty that signals the year turning toward winter once again. You move slowly through the section, choosing carefully, thoughtfully. There is no hurry. No one is rushing you. This is part of the process, the selection, the evaluation, the decision about what your family will eat this week. And because the produce is seasonal, because it is limited, your choices feel more intentional, more connected to the land and the time of year and the rhythms that govern growth and harvest and nourishment. At the back of the store, behind a long glass case, the butcher works in a white apron spotted with faint stains that no amount of washing ever fully removes. He knows your face, he knows your mother's preferences, he remembers that your family likes their steaks thick and their ground beef lean. When you approach, he looks up with a nod, wiping his hands on a towel tucked into his apron strings. The case before you is filled with cuts of meat arranged on white paper, labelled with handwritten tags. Pork chops, chuck roast, chicken fryers. Nothing is prepackaged, nothing is sealed in plastic. If you want something, you ask, and he cuts it fresh, right there in front of you, the knife moving with practiced ease through flesh and bone. He weighs it on a scale, wraps it tightly in brown paper, and ties it with string, creating a neat package that he hands across the counter with a smile. It is personal, it is careful, it is a transaction built on trust and familiarity. The butcher's name is probably Frank or Joe or Ed, something solid and dependable, and he's been working here for 20 years, maybe more. His hands are large and capable, scarred faintly from decades of handling knives and saws and sharp bones. He moves with the economy of someone who has performed these tasks so many times, they have become second nature. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just smooth, confident work. Behind him, hanging from hooks on the wall, are larger cuts waiting to be broken down. Half a pig, a side of beef, chickens still whole and unbutchered. The smell back here is clean but unmistakably animal. The scent of raw meat kept cold, mixed with the faint metallic tang of blood and the sawdust scattered on the floor to absorb moisture and make cleanup easier. You lean slightly toward the case, studying the options. The pork chops are thick, marbled with fat, the bone running through the centre. The chuck roast is deep red, dense with muscle. The chicken fryers are pale and plump, their skin slightly yellow, a sign of good feeding. Everything looks fresh. Everything looks well cared for. The butcher takes pride in his work, and it shows in the quality of what he offers. "What can I get for you today?" he asks, and his voice is warm, easy, the voice of someone comfortable with conversation, with the daily back and forth of commerce and community. You tell him, maybe you need a roast for Sunday dinner, maybe you want ground beef for meatloaf, maybe you're buying chicken to fry tomorrow night. He listens, nods, already reaching for the right cut, already calculating how much you will need, already planning how he will prepare it. He picks up a knife, long and sharp, its blade gleaming under the fluorescent lights. With a few quick, confident strokes, he trims the fat, cuts away the bone, shapes the meat into exactly what you ask for. His movements are fluid, almost elegant, a kind of craftsmanship that is easy to overlook but impossible to replicate. He places the meat on a scale, adjusts it slightly, reads the weight aloud so you know exactly what you are paying for. Then comes the wrapping. He lays a sheet of thick brown paper on the counter, places the meat in the centre, folds the paper over it with crisp, precise folds, tucking the edges in so nothing can leak or escape. He pulls a length of white string from a spool mounted on the wall, loops it around the package, ties it tight with a knot that will hold but can be easily undone. The whole process takes less than a minute, but it feels ceremonial, important, a ritual that honours both the food and the person buying it. He hands the package across the counter, and you take it, feeling its weight, its coolness, the slight dampness seeping through the paper. This is meat that was alive recently, that was raised and slaughtered, and brought here to nourish your family. There is a seriousness to that, a responsibility, and both you and the butcher understand it without needing to say anything. "How's your mother doing?" he asks as you tuck the package into your cart. You tell him. "She's fine, she's well. She sends her regards." He smiles, nods, already turning to the next customer, but the moment lingers, warm and genuine, a reminder that shopping here is not just about buying food. It is about connection, about being known, about the small courtesies that make daily life feel less lonely and more human. The dairy case runs along one wall, a low refrigerated unit with glass doors that fog slightly when you open them. Inside, milk bottles stand in neat rows, glass and heavy, with cardboard caps pressed into the tops. Cream, buttermilk, chocolate milk for the children. Butter sits in waxed paper blocks, stacked like golden bricks. Eggs come in cardboard cartons, some with the farm name stamped on the side, others unmarked but fresh. Cheese is sold by the block, not pre-sliced, wrapped in wax paper and kept cool. You reach in and feel the cold air spill out, prickling your skin. Everything here is simple, unprocessed, close to its source. The milk still has a layer of cream that rises to the top. The butter tastes like something made by hand. There are no non-dairy alternatives, no low-fat options, just the real thing, the way it has always been, rich and satisfying and meant to nourish. The glass doors are cold to the touch, slick with condensation that beads and runs down in slow rivulets. You pull, one open, and the chill rushes out, a small pocket of winter in the middle of the store. The cold feels good on your face, sharp and clean, waking you up slightly, making you more alert. The milk bottles are beautiful in their simplicity. Clear glass, heavy and solid, shaped with shoulders and necks like old-fashioned vessels. Through the glass you can see the milk itself, white and opaque, with that layer of cream sitting on top, thick and yellowish, waiting to be shaken back into the milk or skimmed off for coffee or whipped into something sweet. The cardboard caps fit snugly into the bottle tops, and you have to pry them off with your fingernail or the edge of a knife. A small tactile pleasure that plastic jugs will never replicate. You choose 2 bottles, lifting them carefully. They're heavier than you expect, the glass substantial, the milk inside shifting with a liquid weight that feels real and honest. You place them gently in your cart, nestling them together so they do not clink and crack. The butter sits in neat stacks, each block wrapped in waxed paper printed with the dairy's name and a picture of a cow or a farm or a cheerful milkmaid. The paper is slightly translucent, and you can see the butter inside, pale yellow, firm from the cold. You take one block, feeling its solid weight, imagining it melting on hot pancakes, on toast, stirred into mashed potatoes, enriching everything it touches. The eggs are arranged in rows, cardboard cartons of a dozen, some white, some brown, depending on the breed of hen that laid them. You open a carton to check, a habit ingrained from childhood, making sure none are cracked, none are broken. They sit in their little cups, smooth and perfect, each one a small miracle of nature, ready to be scrambled or fried or baked into cakes and cookies. Cheese sits on a shelf wrapped in wax paper, blocks of cheddar and Swiss, and the occasional wedge of something more exotic, blue cheese or parmesan. You do not buy it pre-sliced. You buy a block and slice it yourself at home, thick or thin depending on your needs, the knife cutting smoothly through the dense, creamy interior. Real cheese, cultured and aged, tangy and rich, nothing processed or artificial. The dairy case is a reminder of a simpler time, when food came directly from farms, when you could taste the pasture in the butter and the grass in the milk, when every product carried the fingerprints of the people who made it, their care and effort visible in the quality of what they offered. You close the glass door, and the cold retreats back inside. Your cart is heavier now, weighted with nourishment, with the ingredients of daily life, with the simple, essential things that keep a household running. The bakery counter sits near the front, filling the store with the scent of yeast and sugar and warmth. Loaves of bread are stacked on wooden shelves, their crusts golden and crackling, still warm from the oven in the back room. Rolls, baguettes, rye bread, dense and dark. Everything is baked fresh that morning, sometimes twice a day if the first batch sells out. There are no preservatives, no plastic bags. If you want a loaf, the baker pulls it from the shelf, slips it into a paper bag, and folds the top closed with a practiced twist. Cookies and pastries sit under glass domes, arranged on doilies, waiting to be chosen for special occasions or Sunday desserts. A wedding cake might be on display. 3 tiers of white frosting and delicate piped flowers, a reminder that this bakery also handles celebrations, milestones, the sweet punctuation marks of neighbourhood life. The smell is intoxicating, a warm cloud of baking that reaches you even before you approach the counter. It is the smell of home, of comfort, of mornings starting right and evenings ending well. Yeast and flour and butter, sugar caramelizing in the heat, crusts browning to the exact shade of perfection. It makes your mouth water. It makes you hungry even if you just ate. Behind the counter, the baker is dusted with flour, his apron white except for the smudges and handprints accumulated over the course of the morning's work. He's been up since before dawn, mixing dough, shaping loaves, tending the ovens with the careful attention of someone who understands that bread is both science and art, that timing and temperature and feel all matter, that experience cannot be replaced by a recipe alone. The loaves are displayed with care, each one set upright or leaning slightly so you can see its shape, its crust, the way it has risen and baked. White bread, soft and light, perfect for sandwiches. Whole wheat, hearty and dense, good for toast. Rye, dark and aromatic, tangy with caraway seeds. You reach for a loaf, and the baker pulls it down for you, holding it carefully so as not to crush the crust. It is still warm. You can feel the heat through the paper bag, a gentle warmth that speaks of freshness, of something made just hours ago, of food that has not been sitting on a shelf for days. The cookies and pastries under the glass domes are arranged like jewels. Chocolate chip cookies, their edges crisp and their centres soft. Sugar cookies decorated with coloured icing. Brownies cut into neat squares. Danish pastries filled with cream cheese or fruit preserves, their tops glazed and glistening. Cinnamon rolls, spiraled and sticky, dripping with frosting. Each one is handmade, shaped and baked with attention, with pride, with the knowledge that someone will take it home and enjoy it, that it will become part of a memory, a birthday, an afternoon treat, a small moment of sweetness in an ordinary day. If it is someone's birthday in your family, you might order a cake here, telling the baker what you want, what flavour, what design, what words to write in icing across the top. He will nod, write it down in his order book, and tell you when it will be ready. And when you come to pick it up, it will be exactly what you ask for, carefully. Boxed, a creation made just for you, for your celebration, for the people you love. The wedding cake on display is a masterpiece, 3 tiers stacked and supported by delicate columns, each tier covered in smooth white frosting, decorated with piped roses and swirls and borders, topped with a tiny bride and groom figurine. It is a work of art, a symbol of commitment and joy, and it stands here as an advertisement of the baker's skill, a reminder that this humble bakery counter can also create something extraordinary when the occasion calls for it. You pay for your bread, tucking the warm loaf into your cart and move on, but the smell lingers on your hands, on your clothes, a faint reminder of what you are carrying, of the nourishment and comfort waiting for you at home. The canned goods aisle stretches long and orderly, shelves lined with tin cans bearing colourful labels that have barely changed in decades. Tomatoes, green beans, peaches in syrup, soup, tuna, condensed milk. Each can is stacked neatly, labels facing out, prices written in grease pencil on the edge of the shelf. There are no barcodes, no QR codes, no apps to scan for coupons. Just the product, the price, and your judgment about whether it fits into your budget this week. You reach for a can of soup, feeling its weight in your hand, solid and reassuring. The label shows a steaming bowl, homey and appealing, a promise of comfort on a cold night. Canned goods are staples here, reliable backups for weeks when fresh food runs short or when time is tight and dinner needs to be simple. They represent security, the knowledge that your pantry is stocked and your family will not go hungry. The shelves rise from floor to nearly ceiling, making the aisle feel like a canyon built from tin and paper labels. Everything is organized by category, groupings that make sense and have remained consistent for so long you could navigate this aisle with your eyes closed. Vegetables together, fruits together, soups in their own section, canned meats, tuna and salmon and the occasional tin of sardines grouped near the end. The cans themselves are satisfying to hold. They're heavy, dense, the metal cool and smooth. The labels are bright and simple, illustrated with images of the contents, tomatoes bursting red and ripe, green beans piled high and fresh-looking, peaches floating in golden syrup. The brand names are familiar, trusted, some of them passed down through generations. Your mother bought these same brands, her mother before her. There is comfort in that continuity, in the knowledge that some things remain dependable even as the world changes around them. You pick up a can of tomatoes, turning it in your hand, checking the label out of habit even though you already know what it says. The price is written in white grease pencil on the shelf edge, neat numbers that the grocer updates each week depending on what the distributor is charging. 35 cents. Reasonable. You place it in your cart, the metal clink echoing softly in the quiet aisle. Soup is a staple in every household, and the soup section takes up a substantial portion of the aisle. Chicken noodle, tomato, vegetable, cream of mushroom, which you will use not just as soup but as a base for casseroles, mixed with tuna or ground beef or chicken, stretched to feed a family on a tight budget. You choose several cans, stacking them in your cart, already planning the meals they will become. The canned fruit sits higher on the shelves, out of reach of small children who might be tempted to grab at the brightly coloured labels. Peaches, pears, fruit cocktail, a mix of everything, diced small and swimming in heavy syrup. These are treats, desserts, something sweet to end a meal or to serve over pound cake on Sunday afternoons. You choose a can of peaches, imagining the syrup drizzled over vanilla ice cream, the soft fruit melting on your tongue. Condensed milk is essential for baking, thick and sweet, used in pies, and fudge and candies. Evaporated milk sits beside it, slightly thinner, used in coffee or recipes that call for cream when cream is too expensive or unavailable. You take one of each, adding them to your growing collection of staples. At the end of the aisle, The canned meats sit in their own small section. Tuna is the most common, packed in water or oil, flaked or solid, used for sandwiches and casseroles and salads. Salmon is more expensive, reserved for special occasions. Spam sits on the shelf too, a legacy of the war years, still popular in some households, sliced and fried for breakfast or chopped into fried rice. The canned goods aisle is a place of abundance and practicality, shelves full of food that will last, that will keep, that will be there when you need it. It is insurance against hard times, against winter storms, against weeks when money is tight and fresh food is out of reach. It is the backbone of your pantry, the foundation on which meals are built, and you move through it with the careful attention of someone who understands that what you choose here matters, that these cans will feed your family, that they represent care and planning, and the quiet work of keeping a household running smoothly. The cereal aisle is modest compared to what will come in later decades. There are perhaps a dozen choices, all familiar, all trusted: cornflakes, shredded wheat, oatmeal in round containers, cream of wheat. Nothing marketed to children with cartoon mascots or sugar-coated promises. These are breakfast foods meant to fuel a day of work, school and chores. The boxes are simple, the graphics straightforward. You choose based on what your family likes, what fits your budget, what will last through the week without going stale. Oatmeal is a practical choice. It is cheap, filling, and can be dressed up with butter and brown sugar on cold mornings. You place a container in your cart, already imagining the steam rising from the pot, the thick, comforting texture, the way it settles warm in your stomach and keeps you steady until lunch. The boxes are stacked neatly, orderly, each brand occupying its own section of the shelf. Cornflakes dominate, the most popular cereal in America, their familiar red and green packaging instantly recognizable. The box shows a bowl of golden flakes, milk being poured over them, a promise of crispy, simple goodness. You have eaten cornflakes your entire life. So has everyone you know. They are as much a part of morning as coffee or toast, or the sound of the radio playing news from the kitchen counter. Shredded wheat sits beside the cornflakes, stacked in boxes that contain individual biscuits, dense and fibrous, meant to be soaked in milk until soft, sweetened with a spoonful of sugar or a drizzle of honey. They are less popular than cornflakes, but favoured by people who believe breakfast should be substantial, filling, something that sticks with you through a morning of hard work. The oatmeal. Containers are round, made of thick cardboard, with a lid that pries off to reveal the flakes or the steel-cut groats inside. The label shows a Quaker man, serene and trustworthy, a symbol of wholesomeness and tradition. Oatmeal is cheap, which matters. A single container can feed a family for a week if you measure carefully. Cook it with water or milk. Serve it hot with butter melting on top, with brown sugar stirred in until it dissolves into sweetness. On the coldest mornings, oatmeal is what keeps you going. A warm foundation that carries you through until the sun is high and the day has found its rhythm. Cream of wheat sits next to the oatmeal, similar but smoother, ground finer, cooked into a porridge that is almost silky. Some families prefer it. Some children find it easier to eat. You have tried both and settled on oatmeal, but you understand the appeal of cream of wheat, the way it slides down warm and gentle, the way it can be flavoured with cinnamon or vanilla, the way it feels like comfort in a bowl. There are a few other options scattered along the shelf. Grape nuts, hard and crunchy, requiring strong teeth and patience. Puffed rice, light and airy, more novelty than nutrition. A box of bran flakes for those concerned about digestion, advertised with clinical efficiency rather than joy. But none of these are staples. None of these are what you reach for week after week. You choose the oatmeal, lifting the round container, feeling its weight, its solidity. This is a good choice, a sensible choice. It will last. It will nourish. It will keep your family fed on mornings when there is no time for anything elaborate, when the day demands that you move quickly, that you fuel yourself and get on with the work that needs doing. The breakfast aisle also holds a few other morning essentials. Pancake mix in boxes, just add water and stir. Syrup in glass bottles, amber and sweet. Instant coffee for people who do not have time to brew a pot. Powdered milk for emergencies, for times when the fresh milk runs out before payday. These are practical items, not luxuries, designed to make mornings easier, to ensure that no one leaves the house hungry, that the day begins with something solid and sustaining. You move on, your cart a little heavier, your list a little shorter, the rhythm of shopping settling into your bones like a familiar song you've known all your life. The baking aisle is where homemakers linger, studying labels, comparing prices, planning cakes and pies and casseroles. Flour comes in cloth sacks that can be repurposed into dish towels or apron fabric once emptied. Sugar is sold in paper bags, white and granulated, or brown and soft, smelling faintly of molasses. Baking soda, baking powder, vanilla extract in small dark bottles. Spices are kept behind the counter in some stores, precious and expensive, doled out in small tins that you refill as needed. Cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, black pepper. You ask the grocer for what you need, and he measures it out, sealing it in a paper packet with your name written on the front. Baking from scratch is not a hobby here. It is necessity. It is how you feed your family, how you stretch your budget, how you fill your home with the smells that mean love and care and effort. The flour sacks are stacked on the bottom shelf, large and heavy, £5 or 10, printed with the mill's name and occasionally with patterns, florals or gingham, because the manufacturers know these sacks will be washed and reused, sewn into aprons or dish towels or even children's clothes during particularly lean times. The fabric is sturdy, tightly woven, meant to last. You hoist one into your cart, feeling its weight shift and settle, a substantial addition that represents dozens of biscuits, loaves of bread, cakes for birthdays, pie crusts for Sunday dinners. Sugar sits beside the flour, paper bags that rustle softly when you touch them. Granulated white sugar for everyday use, sweetening. Coffee, baking cookies, making frosting. Brown sugar for recipes that call for depth, for molasses undertones, for the rich sweetness that white sugar cannot provide. You choose one of each, careful not to tear the bags, mindful that a rip could mean sugar spilling across your kitchen floor, a mess and a waste you cannot afford. Baking soda and baking powder come in small boxes or tins, their labels explaining their purpose in straightforward language. Leavening agents, essential for making things rise, for transforming dense batter into light, fluffy cakes, for giving biscuits their height and tenderness. You choose what you need, checking your pantry mentally, trying to remember if you're running low, whether you used the last of it on Saturday when you made pancakes for the children. Vanilla extract sits on a higher shelf, small bottles of dark liquid, expensive relative to their size, but essential. Real vanilla, extracted from beans, potent and aromatic. You unscrew the cap and smell it. The sweet, warm scent that promises cookies and cakes and everything good about baking. A little goes a long way, just a teaspoon or two, enough to transform a plain batter into something special. The spices, in some stores, are kept behind the counter, locked away like precious metals because they are expensive, imported, valuable. You approach the grocer and tell him what you need. Cinnamon for apple pie, nutmeg for custard, cloves for ham, black pepper for everything. He measures each one carefully, pouring it from a large tin into a smaller one, or into a paper packet if you're buying just a little, just enough to get through the next few weeks. He writes the price on the packet, writes your name if you're putting it on your tab, hands it across with a nod. In other stores, the spices sit on the shelf, small tins arranged in rows, still expensive, still precious, but accessible. You choose what you need, reading the labels, checking the prices, weighing the cost, against your budget, against the recipes you plan to make, against the flavours you want to bring into your home. Baking from scratch is how you feed your family in the 1950s. There are no mixes for everything, no shortcuts that do all the work for you. Cake mix exists, yes, a recent innovation, but many women still prefer to bake the old way, measuring and mixing and kneading, following recipes passed down from their mothers and grandmothers, recipes that live on index cards or in the margins of church cookbooks, stained and worn from use. This aisle represents possibility. Flour and sugar and spices are the raw materials from which comfort is built, from which celebrations are created, from which daily sustenance emerges. And as you move through it, choosing carefully, you are participating in a tradition as old as cooking itself, the transformation of simple ingredients into something nourishing and good. Coffee is sold in bulk, scooped from large burlap sacks or metal, bins and weighed to order. The smell is intoxicating, rich and dark and slightly bitter, a scent that clings to the air and lingers on your clothes. You can choose your roast, your grind, the amount you need. The grocer pours the beans into a paper bag, folds the top, and writes the price in pencil on the outside. You will store it in a tin at home, scooping out a few spoonfuls each morning to brew in your percolator. Tea comes in small boxes, black tea mostly, sometimes green, the leaves loose and fragrant. There are no flavoured teas, no herbal blends, just the basics, the comforting rituals of hot drinks that anchor the day, morning and evening, shared at kitchen tables and over conversations that stretch long into the afternoon. The coffee bins are a focal point of the store, positioned where the scent can reach as many aisles as possible, drawing customers in, making them thirsty, making them crave the ritual of a hot cup and a quiet moment. The bins are large, metal or burlap-lined wood, filled with beans that gleam darkly, oily and aromatic. Some stores offer a choice of roast, light or dark, but most sell just one, a middle ground roast that satisfies most tastes, strong enough to wake you up, smooth enough to drink black if necessary. The grocer uses a metal scoop to measure out the beans, pouring them onto a scale, adjusting until the weight is right. 1 pound, 2 pounds, whatever you ask for. Then he pours the beans into a paper bag, a sturdy brown sack that he folds at the top with a series of crisp, practiced folds, tucking the corners in so nothing spills. He writes the price on the outside in pencil, neat numbers that you can check against your budget. At home, you'll pour the beans into a tin, an airtight container that keeps them fresh, that preserves the oils and the aroma until you're ready to use them. Each morning, you will measure out a few spoonfuls, grinding them if you have a grinder, using them whole if you do not, brewing them in your percolator. That familiar bubbling, hissing sound that means coffee is coming, that means the day is beginning properly. Coffee in the 1950s is not a luxury. It is a necessity, as essential as bread or milk, something that fuels the long hours of work and chores and child-rearing, something that brings families together at the breakfast table, that offers a moment of pause in the afternoon, that accompanies conversation and connection, and the small rituals that make life feel manageable. Tea sits on a nearby shelf. Boxes of loose leaves, black tea primarily, strong and tannic, meant to be brewed in a pot, steeped until the water turns amber, poured into cups with milk and sugar if you like it that way, or drunk plain if you prefer the clean, astringent taste. The boxes are small, the tea expensive relative to coffee, a special indulgence for some families, an everyday staple for others, depending on heritage, on preference, on the habits passed down through generations. Some stores carry green tea as well, lighter, more delicate, favoured by a smaller subset of customers, those with ties to Asia or simply a taste for something different. But black tea dominates, reliable and familiar, the taste of British tradition carried over into American homes. There are no herbal teas here, no chamomile or peppermint or exotic blends promising relaxation or health benefits. Just tea, real tea, leaves from the Camellia sinensis plant, processed and dried and packaged, ready to be steeped and sipped and savoured. You choose your coffee and your tea, adding them to your cart, already anticipating the mornings they will flavour, the afternoons they will punctuate, the conversations they will accompany. These are small purchases, modest in size and cost, but enormous in their significance, in the role they play in shaping the rhythm of your days. The freezer section is new, exciting, a glimpse of modernity arriving in the neighbourhood store. It is smaller than what will come later. Just a few upright cases holding frozen vegetables, orange juice concentrate, and the occasional TV dinner in its aluminum tray. Frozen food is still a novelty in the 50s, not yet a staple, and many homemakers are sceptical. Will it taste as good as fresh? Is it worth the price? But on busy weeks when time is short, these frozen packages offer relief. Peas, corn, strawberries. You can pull them from the freezer, heat them on the stove and serve them alongside a roast with barely any effort. The TV dinners are even more controversial. Complete meals divided into compartments, turkey and gravy, mashed potatoes, a square of brownie. Your mother might try one once, out of curiosity, but she will return to cooking from scratch, sceptical of anything that claims to replace her care. The freezer cases themselves are marvels of engineering. Tall glass-fronted cabinets that frost over on the inside, their motors humming constantly, working hard to maintain the cold. When you open the door, frigid air rushes out like a small winter storm, prickling your face and hands, making you shiver even on warm days. The cold is dry, sharp, aggressive, nothing like the gentle coolness of the dairy case. Inside, the packages are stacked neatly, each one rock solid, frozen so thoroughly that they feel like bricks wrapped in cardboard. The vegetables come in waxed boxes, illustrated with bright, cheerful images of peas still in their pods, corn on the cob, green beans snapped and ready. The printing promises garden freshness, nutrients locked in at the peak of ripeness, convenience without compromise. You're not entirely convinced, but you are willing to try. You pick up a box of frozen peas, turning it over in your hands, reading the instructions on the back. Boil water, add peas, cook for 5 minutes, drain and serve. It sounds almost too easy, suspiciously simple, as though there must be some hidden catch, some sacrifice in flavour or texture that the cheerful packaging does not mention. But the price is reasonable, and the promise of saving time is tempting, especially on nights when you are tired, when the thought of shelling fresh peas feels like more work than you can manage. The orange juice concentrate is another innovation. Small cardboard cans filled with thick frozen syrup that you mix with water at home to create juice. It is cheaper than buying fresh oranges and squeezing them yourself. Easier too, though some people complain it does not taste quite the same, that something is lost in the freezing and reconstituting. Some brightness, some vitality that fresh juice possesses. Still, it is popular, flying off the shelves, especially in households with children who drink juice by the gallon. Then there are the TV dinners, the most controversial item in the freezer case, objects of fascination and suspicion in equal measure. They sit in their aluminum trays, each compartment filled with a different element of the meal, everything pre-cooked, pre-portioned, ready to be heated in the oven and eaten while watching television, hence the name. The concept is revolutionary and vaguely unsettling, a complete meal that requires no cooking, no planning, No effort beyond turning on the oven and setting a timer. The boxes show glamorous photographs of the dinners, steaming and appetizing, each component perfectly arranged, the turkey sliced thick, the gravy glistening, the potatoes mounded high. The reality, you've heard, is somewhat less impressive. The portions small, the flavours bland, the textures mushy from freezing and reheating. But they represent something new, something modern, a vision of the future where cooking is optional, where convenience trumps tradition, where time spent in the kitchen can be reclaimed for other pursuits. Your mother tried one once, you remember, out of curiosity more than need. She heated it according to the instructions, served it on a regular plate instead of eating, straight from the tray, and the family gathered around the table to inspect it. The turkey was dry, the gravy was gelatinous, the brownie was dense and strange. Everyone ate politely, but no one asked for it again. She returned to her usual cooking, satisfied that her own meals, made from scratch with care and attention, were superior in every way. Still, you understand the appeal. On nights when you are exhausted, when the children are demanding, when the thought of planning and cooking a full meal feels overwhelming, the idea of pulling a complete dinner from the freezer and serving it 30 minutes later is seductive, a small surrender to modernity that might, occasionally, be worth it. You close the freezer door, leaving the TV dinners behind, but taking a box of frozen peas with you, a small compromise, a tentative step into the future of food. The checkout counter is at the front of the store, a long wooden surface worn smooth by decades of use. Behind it stands the cashier, someone you recognize, someone who knows your family. She rings up each item individually, punching keys on a mechanical register that clangs and dings with every entry. There is no scanner, no touch screen, just her hands, quick and practiced, picking up each can, each box, each wrapped package, calling out the price, adding it to your total in her head or on a notepad. You watch the numbers climb, keeping your own mental tally, hoping you have budgeted correctly. When she finishes, she announces the total in a clear voice. You pay in cash, counting out bills and coins, and she makes change from the drawer, handing it back with a smile. She asks about your mother, your children, your plans for the week. This is not just a transaction. It is a conversation, a small moment of connection in the middle of an ordinary day. The cashier's name is probably Betty or Dorothy or Marge, something that suits her age and her position, something familiar and trustworthy. She has worked here for years, long enough that she knows most of her customers by name, knows their buying patterns, their preferences, their family situations. She knows when someone is struggling financially, when a family is celebrating something special, when a regular customer has not been in for a while and might need checking on. Her hands move with practiced efficiency, picking up each item from your cart, examining it briefly, finding the price written on the shelf tag or stamped on the can or package, then entering it into the register with a firm press of the keys. The register is mechanical, a beautiful piece of machinery, all metal and glass and precision gears built to last generations. Each key press produces a satisfying click and a corresponding clang from inside the mechanism, and when she pulls the lever on the side, the cash drawer springs open with a cheerful ring that can be heard throughout the store. She calls out the prices as she rings them up, a running commentary that allows you to follow along, to catch any mistakes, to keep your own mental tally. Flour, 49 cents, milk, 32 cents, ground beef, $1.15. Her voice is steady, clear, practiced from doing this hundreds of times a day, thousands of times a week. You watch the numbers accumulate, adding them in your head, comparing them to the budget you set before leaving home, the amount of cash tucked into your purse, or the balance you know is in your checking account. Grocery shopping in the 50s requires careful math, Constant awareness of what things cost, what you can afford, what you might need to put back if the total climbs too high. When she finishes ringing everything up, she pauses, her finger hovering over the total key, then presses it firmly. The register dings one final time, louder than the others, announcing the completion of the transaction. She reads the total from the small window on the front of the machine, turning slightly so you can see it too. Transparency in every aspect of the sale. $8.63, she announces. You reach into your purse, pulling out your wallet, counting out bills carefully. A 5, 3 ones, then coins, quarters and dimes and nickels, counting them into her palm until you reach the exact amount or close enough that she can make change. She takes the money, places the bills in their designated slots in the cash drawer, drops the coins into their compartments with small metallic clinks, then counts out your change, placing it in your hand with deliberate care, making sure you see what she's giving you, making sure everything is correct. "Thank you," she says, and then, without missing a beat, "How's your mother doing? I haven't seen her in a few weeks. You tell her. Your mother is fine, just been busy, maybe a little under the weather, but recovering now." The cashier nods, her face showing genuine interest, genuine concern. "Tell her I said hello. And how are the children? School going? Well?" You answer, brief but warm, appreciating the questions, the interest, the sense that you are not just a customer but a person, someone whose life matters, whose family is known and cared about. This exchange takes less than a minute, but it colours the entire transaction, transforms it from a simple exchange of money for goods into something more meaningful, more human. She glances at your groceries, already mentally preparing to pack them, then catches the eye of the bag boy hovering nearby, a teenager earning pocket money after school, and nods toward your cart. He steps forward eagerly, ready to help, ready to pack your purchases with care, ready to carry them to the door if you need assistance. This is how shopping ends in the 1950s, not with a beep and a printed receipt and a rush to have a nice day, but with conversation, with connection, with the quiet acknowledgement that everyone here is part of the same community, the same neighborhood, the same web of relationships that makes daily life feel less lonely and more shared. The cashier packs your groceries herself, or a young bag boy does, carefully placing items into brown paper bags that stand open on the counter. Heavy things go on the bottom, bread and eggs on top. Nothing is careless. Nothing is rushed. The bags are sturdy, made from thick paper that can hold weight without tearing, and they smell faintly of wood pulp and ink. There are no plastic bags, no reusable totes, just these simple paper carriers that will be folded flat and saved at home, reused for school lunches or trash or wrapping parcels. The bag boy carries your groceries to the door if you need help, or you carry them yourself, one in each arm, balanced carefully, the weight reassuring. You can feel the shapes of the cans, the cool glass of the milk bottles, the soft give of the bread, everything you need for the week bundled up and ready to go home. The brown paper bags are thick and substantial, nothing like the flimsy plastic that will come later, nothing like the thin paper that tears at the slightest strain. These are built to work, to carry 10 or 15 pounds of groceries without complaint, to withstand the walk home without splitting or sagging. The paper is slightly rough to the touch, textured, honest, smelling of the trees it came from and the process that transformed those trees into something useful. The bag boy is probably 15 or 16, working after school or on Saturdays, earning $1 or $2 to save for a car or contribute to his family. He wears an apron, sometimes a small cap, and he takes his job seriously, understanding that how he packs these bags reflects on the store, on his own competence, on his readiness to be trusted with responsibility. He has been trained to pack methodically, thoughtfully, with an eye toward balance and protection. He starts with the heavy items, the cans and jars, placing them flat on the bottom of the bag, arranging them so they create a stable foundation. Canned tomatoes, soup, vegetables. He fits them together like puzzle pieces, maximizing space, minimizing movement. Then he adds the boxes, cereal and cake mix and crackers, stacking them upright against the sides of the bag, using them to create structure, to keep everything in place. The glass bottles go in next, the milk and the cream, positioned carefully so they do not knock against each other, so they sit snugly against the other items, protected and secure. He knows that glass can break, that a cracked bottle means milk spilling everywhere, soaking through the bag, dripping onto the sidewalk, ruining everything. So he is careful, deliberate, making sure everything is safe. Finally, on the very top, he places the delicate items, the bread and the eggs, the pastries from the bakery counter, anything that could be crushed or damaged by the weight of heavier items. The bread is still in its paper wrapper, soft and yielding, and he sets it down gently, like placing a sleeping infant into a crib. The eggs, in their cardboard carton, are positioned flat, cushioned by the bread on one side and a box of crackers on the other. When each bag is full, he folds the top over, 2 or 3 neat folds that close the bag securely, that create a surface you can grip easily, that keep the contents from spilling even if the bag tilts during the walk home. If the bags are particularly full or heavy, he might suggest double bagging, placing one bag inside another for extra strength, for extra security, making sure you will not have to deal with the disaster halfway home. He offers to carry the bags to the door for you, or all the way to your car if you drove, but most people in this neighbourhood walk, and carrying the bags yourself is part of the ritual, part of the experience, part of the small physical effort that connects you to the food you have purchased, to the work of bringing nourishment into your home. You take the bags, one in each arm, feeling their weight settle against your body, solid and reassuring. You can feel the contents through the paper, the hard edges of cans, the cool smoothness of glass, the soft bulk of the bread. Everything is packed carefully, balanced evenly, distributed so that neither bag is too heavy, so that you can carry them comfortably without strain. The cashier smiles as you turn to leave, offering a final thank you, see you next week, a send-off that feels warm and genuine. The bag boy holds the door open for you, nodding politely as you step through, back out into the sunshine, back into the world beyond the store, your groceries in hand, your week's provisions secured, ready to be carried home and unpacked and transformed into meals and nourishment and care. You step back outside into the sunshine, bags in hand, and begin the walk home. 3 blocks, 4, the same route you always take, past the hardware store, the barber shop, the diner on the corner. The bags grow heavier as you walk, cutting into your palms slightly, but it is manageable. You have done this every week for years. Other shoppers pass you on the sidewalk, nodding hello, some of them carrying their own groceries, some pushing strollers or walking dogs. The neighbourhood feels alive, filled with purpose and movement, everyone running their errands, tending to their lives. You shift the bags to get a better grip, and the paper crinkles softly. Inside, the milk bottles clink together. A loaf of bread presses against your arm, still faintly warm. This walk is part of the ritual, a quiet stretch of time where you think about the meals you will make, the dinners you will serve, the care you will provide. The sidewalk is uneven in places, cracked and lifted by tree roots, settled and sunken from decades of freeze and thaw. But you know every imperfection, every place where you need to watch your step, where the concrete is heaved up just enough to catch a toe if you're not paying attention. You navigate it, automatically, your feet finding the safe path without conscious thought. The sun is warm on your shoulders, pleasant without being oppressive, the kind of weather that makes walking a pleasure rather than a chore. A slight breeze stirs the leaves overhead, rustling them gently. dappling the sidewalk with moving shadows. The air smells like cut grass and car exhaust, and the faint, smoky scent of someone grilling in their backyard, layered smells that define summer in the suburbs. The hardware store window displays rakes and garden hoses, paint cans and hammers, tools for maintaining homes and yards, for fixing what breaks, for building what is needed. A man in overalls stands inside the doorway, talking to the clerk, gesturing as he explains some project or problem. You smile as you pass, and he nods back, a silent acknowledgement of shared presence in this neighbourhood, this community. The barbershop is next, its striped poles spinning slowly, red and white and blue, hypnotic and cheerful. Through the window you can see men sitting in chairs draped in capes, barbers snipping and shaving, conversation flowing easily. A boy waits on a bench swinging his legs, probably waiting for his father, probably bored but patient. The shop smells like talcum powder and aftershave, scents that drift out through the open door and mix with the summer air. The diner on the corner is busier, booths filled with people eating lunch, the counter lined with men in work clothes, the air inside thick with the smell of frying onions and coffee and pie. The sign in the window advertises the daily special, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, $2.95. Your stomach rumbles slightly, but you have food at home now. Food you will cook, food that will feed your family for the week. Other people pass you on the sidewalk, some heading toward the grocery store, some coming back like you, arms full of bags, faces showing the same mild fatigue, the same satisfaction of having completed an essential task. Mrs. Henderson from 2 streets over nods and smiles, her own bags looking heavy, her pace slow but steady. You exchange pleasantries, brief words about the weather, about the store, about the week ahead, then move on, both of you focused on getting home. The bags dig into your palms now, the paper handles cutting into your skin, leaving red marks that will fade in an hour. You shift your grip again, redistributing the weight, trying to find a more comfortable position. Inside the bags, things settle and shift, the milk bottles clinking softly, the cans thudding gently against each other, the bread compressing slightly under the weight of everything else. You pass a group of children playing hopscotch on the sidewalk, their chalk-drawn grid bright against the grey concrete. They pause to let you pass, polite and slightly shy, then resume their game, calling out numbers, laughing, arguing over whose turn it is. Their voices fade behind you as you continue walking, the sound mixing with birdsong and distant traffic and the rustle of leaves. 2 more blocks. Your arms are tired now, genuinely tired, but you're close enough that stopping to rest feels unnecessary, feels like admitting weakness. You keep walking, steady and determined, the bags swaying slightly with each step, your house visible now at the end of the street, white clapboard and green shutters and a front porch where you can finally set these bags down and catch your breath. This walk is part of shopping, as essential as choosing the groceries themselves, as fundamental as paying for them. It connects you physically to the food you buy, makes you aware of its weight, its substance, its reality. And as you turn up your front walk, tired but satisfied, you feel the quiet pride of having done this necessary thing, this weekly task that keeps your household running, that ensures no one goes hungry, that proves you are capable and responsible and strong enough to carry what needs carrying. At home, you set the bags on the kitchen counter and begin unpacking slowly, finding a place for everything. The milk goes into the refrigerator, cold and heavy. The bread into the bread box. Canned goods into the pantry, lined up neatly on the shelves. The meat, still wrapped in brown paper, goes into the coldest part of the fridge, ready to be cooked tonight or tomorrow. The produce sits in a bowl on the counter, apples and oranges that will be eaten over the next few days. Everything has a place. Everything is accounted for. You smooth out the empty paper bags and fold them flat, tucking them into a drawer for later use. The kitchen smells like the grocery store now, like coffee and bread and fresh paper, and it feels good, this small domestic ritual of bringing food into your home, of preparing to nourish the people you love. The kitchen is quiet except for the sounds you make, the soft rustle of paper, the clink of glass, the thud of cans being set on shelves. It is a peaceful, quiet, the kind that comes after completing something necessary, after carrying something heavy and setting it down, after moving from public space back into private sanctuary. You unpack methodically, starting with the perishables, the items that need cold storage immediately. The milk bottles are slick with condensation now, warming slightly from the walk, and you place them carefully on the top shelf of the refrigerator, where they will stay coldest. The butter goes on the door rack, the eggs on their designated shelf, the meat in the small compartment designed specifically for it, where the temperature hovers just above freezing. The bread goes into the wooden bread box on the counter, a simple container with a hinged lid that keeps the loaves fresh for days, protecting them from drying out or getting crushed. You can still feel the warmth from the bakery radiating through the paper bag, and you know that tonight's dinner will include fresh bread sliced thick and spread with butter, soaking up gravy or soup, or simply enjoyed on its own. The canned goods go into the pantry, a narrow closet lined with shelves, each shelf assigned a category. Vegetables on one, soups on another, fruits and desserts on a third. You place each can carefully, labels facing out, arranging them by type and size, creating order from the randomness of your shopping cart. This organisation is not vanity. It is practical, ensuring you can find what you need quickly when you're cooking, ensuring nothing gets lost or forgotten in the back, ensuring you use what you have before it gets too old. The boxes, cereal and cake mix and crackers go on the higher shelves, stacked neatly, aligned so their edges are flush, their labels visible. The flour and sugar, heavy and awkward, go on the bottom shelf where their weight cannot crush anything beneath them, and where you can reach them easily when you need to bake. The produce stays out, a bowl of fruit on the counter where it can ripen in the air and light, where it is visible and accessible, where the children can grab an apple or an orange as a snack without having to ask permission. Apples and oranges mostly, sturdy fruits that can sit out for days without spoiling, that can withstand being handled and examined and sometimes dropped and rolled across the floor. When everything's put away, you gather the empty paper bags, smoothing them flat with your hands, pressing out the wrinkles, folding them into neat rectangles. These bags are too useful to throw away. They will be used again for school lunches, for packing sandwiches and cookies, for lining trash cans, for wrapping packages to mail, for starting fires in the fireplace, for any of 100 small household tasks that require sturdy paper. You tuck them into a drawer designated for this purpose, a drawer already half full of flattened bags from previous shopping trips, a small archive of errands completed, of weeks past, of groceries brought home and unpacked, and consumed. The kitchen smells different now, layered with the scents you have brought into it. Coffee from the beans you purchased, waiting to be brewed tomorrow morning. Bread from the bakery, yeasty and warm. The faint green smell of apples. The earthy scent of potatoes still dusted with soil. The clean, slightly metallic smell of tin cans. The paper smell of the bags themselves, wood pulp and ink, and the faint mustiness of storage. You stand for a moment surveying your work, feeling the satisfaction of a task completed well. Your pantry is stocked, your refrigerator is full, your family will eat this week, nourished and cared for, sustained by the food you chose and carried and stored, by the meals you will cook, by the effort you put into this essential, ordinary work. This is the end of the shopping ritual, this quiet moment of completion, this sense of provision and preparation and domestic accomplishment. And it feels good, deeply good, in a way that is hard to articulate, but impossible to deny. Money is tight in many households in the 50s, and grocery shopping requires careful planning. You make a list before you leave, writing down only what you truly need, crossing off anything that feels like a luxury. You know the price of everything in the store, not because you are checking apps or scanning codes, but because you have memorized it through repetition. A dozen eggs, a pound of butter, a loaf of bread. You keep a running total in your head as you shop, making sure you do not overspend, making sure there is enough left over for next week. Some weeks are harder than others. Some weeks you put back the bacon or skip the cookies or choose the cheaper cut of meat. But the grocer understands. He knows when families are struggling, and sometimes he will quietly mark down a price or slip an extra apple into your bag without charging for it. Generosity is quiet here, unspoken, woven into the fabric of community. The list is written on whatever paper is handy, the back of an envelope, a torn corner of newspaper, a page from a small notepad kept by the telephone. The writing is careful, methodical, organised by category or by the layout of the store, a strategy to avoid wasting time, to avoid the temptation of browsing, to stay focused on what you actually need rather than what you might want. Flour, sugar, coffee, milk, eggs, bread, ground beef, potatoes, onions, canned tomatoes, soap. The list is short, practical, stripped of anything unnecessary. There are no treats, no indulgences, just the basics, the staples that will stretch across multiple meals, that will feed a family without breaking the budget. You know exactly what everything costs because you have bought these same items dozens of times, because prices change slowly in this era, because the grocer writes the prices on the shelves in grease pencil, and they remain stable for weeks or months at a time. Eggs are 30 cents a dozen. Milk is 32 cents a half gallon. Ground beef is 59 cents a pound, or 49 if you choose the fattier grind. Bread is 20 cents a loaf. These numbers are burned into your memory, automatic as your own phone number, essential as your own address. As you shop, you calculate constantly, adding each item to the running total in your head. 30 cents plus 32 is 62. Add 20 cents for bread, that is 82. Add 59 for the meat, that is 141. The math is continuous, relentless, necessary. A mental exercise you perform every week, making sure you stay within the $5 or $6 or $7 you have budgeted, making sure you do not reach the checkout counter and find yourself unable to pay, humiliated, forced to put items back while other customers wait and watch. Some weeks the math works out perfectly, and you have a few coins left over, enough to buy a candy bar for the children or a magazine for yourself, a small luxury that feels enormous. Other weeks the math does not work, and you have to make choices, difficult ones, putting back the butter and settling for lard, skipping the coffee because there is half a can left at home, choosing the neck bones instead of the roast because they are half the price and can be simmered into soup that will feed the family for 2 days. The grocer watches these calculations not overtly, not judgmentally, but with the awareness that comes from decades of serving families in this neighbourhood, from understanding the rhythms of payday and bills, from recognising the signs of financial strain in the way people shop, in what they choose, in what they reluctantly put back. Sometimes, when he sees a family struggling, when he notices a mother counting coins at the register, or a father's face tightening as the total climbs, he intervenes quietly, subtly, in ways that preserve dignity. He marks down the price of the ground beef, claiming it is a day old and needs to move quickly. He rounds the total down instead of up, pocketing the difference himself rather than forcing a customer to scramble for pennies. He slips an extra apple or orange into the bag, a gift disguised as a mistake. Plausible deniability that allows the recipient to accept without embarrassment. This generosity is never announced, never advertised, never used as leverage or held over anyone's head. It is simply part of how business is done in this neighbourhood, part of the unspoken contract between grocer and customer, part of the understanding that everyone struggles sometimes, that hard times are temporary, that the community takes care of its own. When you shop on a tight budget, every decision matters, every penny counts, every item must justify its place in your cart. And while that pressure is real and constant and sometimes exhausting, there is also something grounding about it, something clarifying. You waste nothing. You appreciate everything. You understand the value of food, the labour it represents, the nourishment it provides, the care it requires. And when you unpack your groceries at home, when you look at the modest haul you manage to afford, when you begin planning the meals that will stretch these ingredients across an entire week, you feel a quiet pride, the satisfaction of making something out of very little, of feeding your family despite the constraints, of proving once again that you are capable and resourceful and enough. If you bring children with you, the trip becomes slower, more chaotic, but also more joyful. They trail behind you, small hands reaching for things on lower shelves, asking questions, pointing at colourful labels. The grocer greets them by name, offers them a piece of candy from the jar on the counter, asks them about school. They are learning how to shop, how to choose, how to behave in public spaces where politeness and patience are expected. Sometimes they push the cart, standing on their toes to reach the handle, guiding it carefully down the aisle with you walking close behind. Sometimes they carry a small basket, proud to be helping, important in their own small way. These trips are teaching moments, chances to show them how money works, how food is chosen, how community is built one interaction at a time. Children make grocery shopping unpredictable, transforming a straightforward errand into an adventure filled with detours, delays, and small negotiations. Your daughter wants to look at the cookies. Your son is fascinated by the lobster tank, if the store has one, pressing his face against the glass, watching the creatures crawl slowly across the bottom. They do not understand yet that shopping has a rhythm, a purpose, a timeline that needs to be respected. To them, the store is a wonderland, full of colours and textures and interesting things waiting to be discovered. You try to channel their energy, to make them partners in the process rather than obstacles to it. You hand your daughter the shopping list and ask her to help you find the items, reading them aloud even though she's still learning her letters, sounding out words slowly, proudly. You let your son choose the apples, teaching him to look for bruises, to feel for firmness, to pick the ones that will taste best, that will last longest. They ask endless questions the way children do, unburdened by any sense that questions might be annoying or inappropriate. Why do we need flour? What is baking powder for? How do they get the peas into the can? Can we have cookies this week? Why not? Who decided milk comes from cows? Where do chickens come from? Why can't we buy a lobster? You answer patiently, or as patiently as you can manage, knowing that these questions are how they learn, how they begin to understand the world and their place in it. You explain that flour makes bread and cakes, that baking powder helps things rise, that peas are picked and frozen and sealed in cans so we can eat them even in winter, that cookies cost money and we need to save money for other things, that milk comes from cows because that is how nature designed it, that chickens come from farms, that lobsters are expensive and we're not having lobster tonight or possibly ever. The grocer plays his part beautifully, greeting your children with genuine warmth, remembering their names, asking about school and hobbies and friends. He keeps a jar of penny candy on the counter specifically for this purpose, small wrapped pieces of butterscotch or peppermint or lemon drops, and when the shopping is done and you're checking out, he offers them each a piece, a tiny reward for good behaviour, a small gesture that makes them feel seen and valued and special. Your son chooses the butterscotch, unwrapping it immediately, popping it into his mouth with satisfaction. Your daughter takes the peppermint, holding it carefully, saving it for later, already exhibiting the self-control that will serve her well in life. Sometimes you let them push the cart, their small hands gripping the handle, their whole bodies leaning into the effort of moving it forward. You walk close behind, ready to steer if they veer off course, ready to catch them if they trip, ready to intervene if they crash into a display. They take this responsibility seriously, concentrating hard, announcing when they need to turn, warning you about obstacles, proud to be trusted with such an important task. Other times, you give them a small basket, something they can carry themselves, something light enough that it will not hurt their arms, and you assign them specific items to find and collect. The bread, a can of soup, a box of crackers. They scurry off, returning triumphantly, holding up their finds like trophies, beaming with pride at having helped, at having contributed something real to the family's weekly provisioning. These trips take longer than shopping alone. They require more patience, more negotiation, more energy. But they're also investments, teaching your children skills they will need for the rest of their lives, showing them how to be responsible, how to make choices, how to interact with shopkeepers and neighbours, how to be part of a community. And years from now, when they are grown and shopping for their own families, they will remember these trips, these lessons, these small moments of being trusted and included and taught. If you need something the store does not usually carry, you ask, and the grocer will order it for you. A special cut of meat for a holiday dinner. A particular brand of canned fruit your mother used to buy. Ingredients for a recipe you found in a magazine. He writes it down in a small notebook he keeps behind the counter, and the next week, when you come in, it is waiting for you, set aside with your name on it. This personal service is expected, valued, essential. The grocer knows his customers, knows their preferences, knows what they need before they ask. He takes pride in this, in being able to provide, in being a dependable part of their lives. Shopping here is not anonymous. It is relational, built on trust and familiarity and mutual respect. The notebook is worn, its cover soft and creased from being handled constantly, its pages filled with names and orders, requests and special instructions, dates and details that ensure nothing is forgotten. The grocer keeps it in his shirt pocket or on a shelf beneath the cash register, within easy reach, always available when someone asks for something unusual. You approach him one afternoon, holding a magazine clipping, a recipe for something fancy you want to try, something that requires ingredients not normally stocked. Anchovy paste, capers, a specific brand of olive oil. He listens as you explain, nodding, jotting notes in his book, asking clarifying questions. How much do you need? When do you need it by? Any particular brand, or will any do? You answer, feeling grateful that this is even possible, that a small neighbourhood store can accommodate special requests, that the grocer is willing to go to the trouble of ordering something for a single customer, that personal service like this still exists and is still valued. He tells you it will take a week, maybe 10 days, that he'll have to order from his distributor, that it might cost a bit more than the regular items because special orders involve extra effort. You nod, agreeing, understanding, appreciating his honesty. He writes your name next to the order, underlines it so he will not forget, and promises he will call you when it arrives, or simply set it aside and let you know next time you come in. A week later, when you return for your regular shopping, he remembers without prompting. He reaches under the counter and produces a small bag with your name written on it in pencil. Inside the items you requested exactly as specified. You thank him, surprised and pleased by his reliability. by the fact that among all the customers he serves, all the orders he fills, all the details he manages, he remembered yours, he followed through, he made it happen. This kind of service builds loyalty, not through rewards programs or discount cards, but through human connection, through the simple act of knowing people, caring about their needs, following through on promises. The grocer understands this instinctively. He knows that customers who feel known, who feel valued, who feel like their requests matter, will return week after week, year after year, even if his prices are occasionally a bit higher than the chain store opening across town. He also keeps mental notes about his customers' preferences, anticipating their needs without being asked. He knows that Mrs. Patterson likes the dark rye bread, so he makes sure to save her a loaf when they're running low. He knows that Mr. Chen buys the same cut of pork every Saturday, so he sets one aside, trimmed the way Mr. Chen prefers. He knows that the young couple in the new house are experimenting with fancy recipes, so he keeps an eye out for unusual ingredients that might interest them, mentioning new items when they come in, suggesting possibilities, helping them expand their culinary horizons. This knowledge is not written down anywhere. It is not stored in a database or tracked by a computer. It lives in his memory, accumulated over years of paying attention, of listening, of caring enough to remember. And it is this knowledge, this attentiveness, this personal investment in his customers' lives that makes shopping here feel less like commerce and more like relationship, less like a transaction and more like an exchange between people who know each other, who trust each other, who want the best for each other. The rhythm of shopping follows the seasons closely in the 50s. Spring brings fresh greens, asparagus, strawberries. Summer means tomatoes, corn, peaches, melons. Fall arrives with apples, squash, root vegetables. Winter narrows the selection to cabbage, potatoes, canned goods and whatever can be, stored or shipped from warmer climates. You do not expect variety year-round. You do not expect convenience. You expect to eat what is available, to adjust your recipes to match the season, to preserve and store during times of plenty, so you have something to fall back on when fresh food is scarce. This rhythm feels natural, grounding, a connection to the land and the cycles that govern it. You know that strawberries taste better when they are in season, that tomatoes from the summer sun are worth the wait, that food is sweeter when it comes at the right time. Spring arrives gradually, announced first by the appearance of tender greens in the produce section, lettuce and spinach, and the first asparagus spears, pale green and delicate, expensive because they are early, because they signal the end of winter's monotony, because people are hungry for something fresh after months of canned and stored food. You buy a small bunch, splurging slightly, justifying the expense by the joy it will bring. By the way, your family will respond to something crisp and green and alive. Strawberries come next, local berries if you're lucky, small and intensely flavoured, nothing like the large watery berries that will be bred and shipped year-round in later decades. These strawberries are seasonal, precious, fleeting. You buy a pint and make shortcake, or you hull them and serve them with cream and sugar, or you simply eat them one by one, savouring their sweetness, knowing they'll be gone in a few weeks, knowing you will wait another year before tasting them again. Summer is abundance, the produce section overflowing with everything ripe and ready, tomatoes and corn and zucchini and peppers and melons and peaches, so much that you can barely use it all, so much that you preserve what you can, canning tomatoes for winter sauces, freezing corn if you have a freezer, making jam from the peaches, trying to capture this bounty so it lasts beyond these brief generous months. The tomatoes are extraordinary in summer, vine-ripened and sun-warmed, their scent so strong it fills the entire store, sweet and green and faintly acidic. You choose carefully, looking for the ones that give slightly when pressed, that smell like August itself, that promise to taste like childhood and garden rose and everything good about summer. You slice them thick for sandwiches, or you chop them for salads, or you cook them into sauce, or you simply eat them like apples, juice running down your chin, salt shaker nearby for sprinkling. Fall brings the harvest, apples and squash and root vegetables, food that stores well, that can be kept in cellars or pantries, that will feed you through the winter when fresh food becomes scarce. The apples are local, picked from nearby orchards, varieties you do not see in supermarkets anymore, names like Winesap and Cortland and Northern Spy, each with its own flavour profile, its own best use, some for eating, some for baking, some for pressing into cider. Winter narrows the selection dramatically, the produce section shrinking to cabbage and potatoes, onions and carrots, root vegetables that have been stored since harvest, their skins dusty, their freshness fading but still serviceable. You buy what is available and supplement with canned goods, with preserved foods, with the stores you put up during the summer, making do, waiting for spring to come again and start the cycle anew. This seasonal rhythm is not a hardship. It is simply how life works, how food works, how the relationship between people and land is structured. You do not question it. You do not resent it. You accept it as natural, as right, as the way things have always been and always will be. And because of this acceptance, food tastes better. Strawberries in June are a gift, not an entitlement. Tomatoes in August are a celebration, not a commodity. Apples in October are a harvest, not a product engineered for year-round availability and maximum profit. You eat with the seasons, and the seasons teach you patience, teach you gratitude, teach you to appreciate what you have when you have it, knowing it will not last forever, knowing that scarcity makes abundance sweeter, knowing that waiting makes the eventual reward more meaningful. Shopping in the 50s is a social event, not just a chore to be checked off a list. You run into neighbours in the aisles, stop to chat, ask about their families, share news. The grocer joins in, offering opinions, telling jokes, keeping the atmosphere light and warm. People take their time here. They are not rushing. They are not distracted by phones or earbuds. They are present, engaged, part of a shared experience that happens every week. This social connection is part of what makes shopping feel less like work and more like participation in community life. You leave the store not just with groceries, but with information, with reassurance, with the sense that you are known and cared for. You round the corner into the canned goods aisle and nearly collide with Mrs. Henderson, your neighbour from 2 streets over, the woman whose children play with your children, whose husband works at the same factory as your husband, whose life overlaps with yours in a dozen small ways. "Oh," she says, stepping back, laughing. "I wasn't watching where I was going." Neither was I, you admit, and suddenly you're both laughing, and the moment of near collision becomes an opportunity, an excuse to stop, to talk, to catch up on everything that has happened since you last spoke. She tells you about her daughter's school play, about the promotion her husband is hoping for, about the new refrigerator they are considering buying, a big expense but maybe worth it given how old their current one is, how it struggles to keep things cold, how the door seal has worn out and lets the cold escape. You listen, sympathetic, offering your own stories in return, about your son's trouble with arithmetic, about the leak in your roof that needs fixing, about the possibility of taking a vacation this summer if money allows, maybe driving to the coast, renting a cabin, letting the children see the ocean. The conversation flows easily, naturally, the way conversations do between people who know each other well, who share similar lives, who understand the joys and struggles without needing everything explained. You talk about the weather, about the church social coming up, about the new family that moved in down the street, about whether the grocery store's meat prices have gone up, or if it just feels that way. The grocer passes by, restocking shelves, and joins in briefly, offering his opinion on the meat prices. They have gone up just a little, wholesale cost from the distributor, asking about Mrs. Henderson's daughter's play. When is it he would love to attend if his schedule allows? Mentioning that he got in some beautiful strawberries this morning if either of you are interested. You both are, of course, and you follow him back to the produce section, continuing your conversation as you walk, Mrs. Henderson telling you about a recipe she wants to try, you mentioning that your mother used to make strawberry shortcake every June, that maybe this year you will do the same, continuing the tradition. Other customers pass, some nodding hello, some stopping to add their own comments to the conversation, turning your two-person chat into a small gathering, informal and spontaneous, the kind of social moment that happens naturally in spaces where people feel comfortable, where they are known, where stopping to talk is encouraged rather than frowned upon. This is why shopping takes longer in the 50s, not because the stores are inefficient or the checkout slow, but because shopping is not just about acquiring goods. It is about connecting, about maintaining relationships, about participating in the social fabric that holds a neighborhood together. You come for groceries, yes, but you also come to see people, to be seen, to remind yourself and others that you are part of something larger than your individual household, part of a community that functions because people talk to each other, care about each other, show up for each other week after week. When you finally part ways with Mrs. Henderson, promising to talk more later, to let her know about the vacation if it happens, to attend her daughter's play if you can find a babysitter, you continue your shopping feeling lighter, warmer, more connected. The groceries are important, essential even, but this conversation, this moment of human contact, this reminder that you're not alone in navigating the challenges of daily life, may be even more valuable than the food you came to buy. In some neighborhoods, especially in smaller towns, the grocer keeps a ledger of tabs, customers who pay at the end of the week or the end of the month when paychecks arrive. This system runs on trust. The grocer knows his customers, knows they are good for it, knows that hard times happen and people need help to get through. You might ask to put this week's groceries on your tab, and he writes it down without hesitation, adding the total to your running balance. When you get paid, you come in and settle up, counting out cash or writing a check, and the slate is cleared until next time. This informal credit system keeps families fed during lean weeks, provides a safety net when money is tight, and reinforces the bonds of community. It would not work in a big chain store. It only works here, where everyone knows everyone, where reputation and relationship matter more than policy. The ledger is thick, bound in worn leather or heavy cloth, its pages filled with names and numbers written in the grocer's careful hand, entries dating back months or years, a record of transactions and trust, of money owed and money paid, of the ebb and flow of household finances in a neighborhood where most families live paycheck to paycheck, where unexpected expenses can throw everything off balance, where the difference between making it and not making it can be a week's worth of groceries bought on faith. You approach the counter one afternoon, your shopping done, your cart full, but your wallet distressingly light. Payday is 3 days away, and the bills came due earlier than expected, and the children needed new shoes, and suddenly there is not enough money left to pay for food, at least not until Friday. The grocer sees your hesitation, your discomfort, the way you're calculating in your head, trying to figure out which items to put back, which meals can be skipped or stretched, how to make do with less. He does not wait for you to explain or apologize. He simply asks in a voice low enough that other customers cannot hear, "Tab." You nod, relieved and embarrassed in equal measure, grateful for the option but ashamed of needing it, even though you know you're not the first, even though you know that half the neighborhood has used this system at one time or another, even though you know there is no judgment here, only practical assistance for a temporary problem. He writes your name at the top of a new page if you have never used the tab system before, or returns to your existing page if you have, and he begins itemizing your purchases, writing down each item and its price, adding them up at the bottom, stating the total aloud so you know exactly what you owe. $8.47, he says. I'll mark it for Friday. Friday, you confirm. Payday. He nods, closes the ledger and begins packing your groceries as though nothing unusual has happened, as though this is just another transaction, routine and unremarkable. And in a sense it is. This is how the store operates, how the neighbourhood functions, how people take care of each other when times are hard. On Friday, when you receive your paycheck, you cash it at the bank and return to the store, money in hand, ready to settle your debt. The grocer pulls out the ledger, finds your page, reads the total, and you count out bills and coins until the amount is met. He marks the entry as paid, thanks you, and that is the end of it. No interest charged, no fees assessed, no lectures about financial responsibility, just business conducted on human terms, with understanding and flexibility and trust. This system only works because the grocer knows his customers. He knows who will pay and who will not. He knows who is temporarily struggling and who is habitually irresponsible. He knows when to extend credit and when to gently refuse. And his customers, in turn, understand that this trust is precious, that abusing it would hurt not just themselves, but the entire community. That the tab system survives because people honour it, because they pay what they owe, because they recognise that reputation matters more than money. That being known as someone who keeps their word is worth more than any amount saved by skipping out on a debt. This is not how business will be conducted in the future. Chain stores will not offer credit. Corporations will not trust customers. Relationships will be replaced by policies, flexibility by rigidity, community by anonymity. But here now, in this neighbourhood store in the 1950s, the old ways still hold, and people still take care of each other, and trust is still the currency that matters most. By the late 50s, changes are already beginning to arrive. Supermarkets are being built on the edges of town, massive stores with parking lots and wider aisles and prices that undercut the neighbourhood grocers. Chains are expanding, standardizing, offering convenience and variety that small stores cannot match. Slowly, quietly, the old way of shopping begins to fade. Some neighbourhood markets close. Others struggle, trying to compete, trying to hold on to customers who are lured away by lower prices and one-stop shopping. The personal service remains, the quality remains, but the economics are shifting, and the future is already visible on the horizon. For now, though, the neighbourhood store is still here, still open, still serving the people who have shopped here for decades. And that is enough. The supermarkets are enormous, built on empty land where farms used to be, sprawling structures with flat roofs and walls of glass, surrounded by acres of asphalt parking. You drive past one under construction on your way across town, watching as the steel framework rises, as workers swarm over the site, as the building takes shape week by week. It is impressive, undeniably, but also vaguely unsettling, this massive temple to commerce that will dwarf everything around it, that will change the landscape and the rhythms of shopping and the very nature of how people buy food. The advertisements in the newspaper are relentless, full-page spreads announcing grand openings, promising the lowest prices in town, offering free samples and door prizes and shopping carts, so large they could carry a week's worth of groceries in a single trip. The pictures show aisles that stretch impossibly long, shelves stocked floor to ceiling with thousands of products, bright fluorescent lighting that makes everything look clean and modern and efficient. The message is clear. This is the future, and the future is bigger, cheaper, faster, better. Some of your neighbours have already started shopping there, seduced by the prices that are genuinely lower, by the convenience of parking right outside the door. by the novelty of so much choice in one place. They report back with mixed feelings. Yes, the prices are good. Yes, the selection is impressive, but the store is so large it takes forever to find anything. The checkout lines are long. The cashiers do not know your name. There is no butcher to ask for advice, just pre-packaged meat in plastic wrap sitting in refrigerated cases. There is no grocer to order special items or extend credit when money is tight, just anonymous employees who clock in and clock out and have no personal stake in whether you return or not. Your neighbourhood grocer feels the impact immediately. Foot traffic decreases. Sales drop. Some weeks are slower than they have been in years. The aisles emptier, the register quieter. He does not complain, at least not loudly, but you can see the worry in his face, the way he studies his ledgers, the way he marks down prices on items that are not moving, trying to attract customers back, trying to compete with stores that have resources and scale he cannot match. He considers his options, limited as they are. He could lower his prices further, but that would cut into his already thin margins, possibly drive him out of business faster. He could expand his inventory, but there is no room, no budget, no way to match the variety the supermarkets offer. He could advertise, but his small ads in the local paper look pathetic next to the supermarket's splashy promotions. Mostly he relies on what he's always relied on: relationships, quality, service, the loyalty of customers who value what he provides beyond just the lowest price. And for now, that is enough. The store survives. People still come, maybe not as many, maybe not as often, but enough to keep the doors open, enough to justify getting up each morning and unlocking the store and sweeping the floors and restocking the shelves and greeting the customers who still choose to shop here, who still value the personal touch, who still believe that community matters more than saving a few pennies. But the future is coming, inevitable and unstoppable, and everyone knows it. The neighbourhood stores will not all survive. Some will close next year, some the year after, one by one succumbing to economic forces they cannot control, to consumer choices that prioritise price and convenience over relationship and service. The way of life they represent, the rhythm of shopping they embody, the social fabric they help maintain, all of it will fade slowly at first, then rapidly, until one day people will barely remember that shopping used to be different, that it used to be personal, that it used to mean something more than just acquiring goods as efficiently as possible. But for now, this afternoon, this moment, the neighbourhood store is still here, still open, still serving, and that has to be enough. Decades later, when you think about grocery shopping in the 1950s, what you remember most is not the products or the prices, it is the people. The butcher who knew your name, the cashier who asked about your children, the grocer who saved a special order just for you. It is the slowness, the care, the sense that shopping was not just about buying food, but about being part of a community that looked after its own. You remember the smells, the sounds, the feel of paper bags in your arms and glass bottles clinking together. You remember the rhythm of it, the weekly ritual that grounded you, connected you, reminded you that even ordinary tasks could be meaningful when done with attention and care. And you realise, looking back, that what seemed so normal then, so unremarkable, was actually something precious, something worth remembering, something that cannot quite be replicated in the world that came after. The memories come back in fragments, sensory and specific, triggered by unexpected things. The smell of fresh bread in a modern bakery section, and suddenly you are back in that neighbourhood store watching the baker pull loaves from the oven, feeling the warmth on your face, the weight of a glass bottle in your hand at a farmer's market, and you remember carrying milk home, the bottles clinking in your shopping bag, the cream rising to the top, the sound of a mechanical cash register in an antique shop, and you hear that distinctive ding that satisfying clang of the drawer opening, the cashier's voice calling out prices in a steady rhythm. You remember the butcher, Frank or Joe or Ed, his hands scarred and capable, the way he wrapped meat in brown paper and tied it with string, the way he recommended cuts for specific dishes, the way he set aside the best pieces when he knew you were having company. You remember his pride in his work, the cleanliness of his counter, the sharpness of his knives, the respect he showed for the animals he butchered and the customers he served. You remember the cashier, Betty or Dorothy or Marge, her fingers quick on the register keys, her memory for prices, her interest in your life that was genuine, not scripted, not required by corporate policy, but offered freely because she actually cared. You remember the way she asked about your mother's health, your children's accomplishments, your plans for the holidays, the way she listened to the answers, really listened, storing details that she would remember next week when you came back. You remember the grocer himself, the owner, the person whose name was painted above, the door whose livelihood depended on keeping customers satisfied, who took personal responsibility for everything that happened in his store. You remember his willingness to order special items, to extend credit when times were hard, to stay open a few minutes late if someone was running behind, to treat every customer not as a transaction, but as a person, a neighbour, a valued member of the community he served. You remember the slowness of it all, the way shopping took time not because the store was inefficient, but because people stopped to talk, to catch up, to maintain relationships that mattered. You remember standing in the canned goods aisle chatting with Mrs. Henderson, losing track of time, not caring, because this conversation was part of why you came, because social connection was as important as groceries, because isolation was avoided through small daily interactions that built up over time into something substantial and sustaining. You remember the care that went into everything, the way produce was displayed and rotated, the way meat was cut and wrapped, the way groceries were packed with heavy items on the bottom and delicate items on top, the way the bag boy carried your purchases to the door, the way every aspect of shopping felt intentional and thoughtful, and designed to make your life easier, better, more pleasant. You remember the rhythm of weekly shopping, the ritual of making a list, walking to the store, moving through familiar aisles in a familiar order, greeting familiar faces, carrying your bags home, unpacking everything and putting it away. The repetition was comforting, grounding, a steady heartbeat in the midst of life's chaos. You knew what to expect. You knew where things were. You knew who you would see. And that predictability felt less like monotony and more like security, less like routine and more like ritual. Looking back now, from the vantage point of decades later, from a world of self-checkout and online ordering and groceries delivered to your door without human contact, you realize how much was lost when the neighborhood stores closed, when shopping became anonymous and transactional, when efficiency replaced relationship and convenience replaced community. The modern way has advantages, certainly. The selection is enormous. The prices are lower. The hours are longer. You can buy strawberries in December and asparagus in February and food from every corner of the world. But something essential was traded away. Something that cannot be quantified in dollars or measured in convenience. Something about being known, being valued, being part of something larger than yourself. And while you cannot go back, while the past is gone and the world has moved on, you can remember. You can honour what was good about that era. You can tell your children and grandchildren about a time when shopping meant more than just buying food, when grocers knew your name and butchers wrapped your meat in paper and cashiers asked about your family, when community was built in ordinary places through ordinary interactions, when the simple act of buying groceries could make you feel less alone. That is what you remember most. Not the products, Not the prices, but the people and the connections and the sense that you belonged. When the neighborhood grocery stores faded and the supermarkets took over, something was lost that is hard to name. Convenience arrived, and variety, and lower prices. But connection faded. The personal relationships that made shopping feel human gave way to efficiency and anonymity. You could buy more, faster, cheaper, but you could not chat with the butcher about your mother's health. You could not run into your neighbour in the produce aisle and catch up on news. You could not ask the grocer to order something special and trust that he would remember. Shopping became transactional, efficient, isolated. It became something to get through rather than something to experience. And, while progress brought many good things, it also left behind a way of life where even ordinary errands were woven into the fabric of community, where commerce was not separate from relationship but intertwined with it, making every purchase a small act of connection. The loss happened gradually, so slowly that most people didn't notice until it was already gone, until they looked around one day and realized that shopping had changed completely, that the old neighborhood stores had closed or been converted into other businesses, that the personal relationships that used to accompany every purchase had evaporated like morning dew. What was lost first was knowledge. The butcher who knew how your family liked their meat cut, who remembered that you preferred lean ground beef and thick pork chops, who saved the best roasts for customers he had served for years. Gone. Replaced by anonymous meat cutters working in back rooms far from customers, packaging everything in plastic and styrofoam, standardizing cuts according to corporate specifications that had nothing to do with individual preferences. The grocer who knew when you were struggling financially, who extended credit without judgment, who marked down prices quietly to help families get through hard weeks. Gone. Replaced by policies and procedures that treated every customer the same, that offered no flexibility, no understanding, no recognition that sometimes people need help, and that help should come from those who know them best. The cashier who asked about your children by name, who remembered that your son was struggling with arithmetic and your daughter was in the school play, who cared enough to follow up next week and ask how things went. Gone. Replaced by teenage employees who smiled politely but did not know you, who were trained to be friendly but not to form relationships, who would not recognize you if they saw you outside the store because you were not a person to them, just another customer in an endless stream of transactions. What was lost next was time, the ability to shop slowly, to linger in aisles, to stop and chat with neighbours, to let grocery shopping be a social event rather than a chore to be completed as quickly as possible. The supermarkets were designed for efficiency, their layouts calculated to move customers through quickly, their wide aisles and clear signage optimized for speed. Stopping to talk felt like blocking traffic. Taking your time felt like holding up the line. The entire atmosphere discouraged lingering, encouraged rushing, made you feel guilty for not being efficient. What was lost then was ritual. The weekly walk to the neighborhood store, the familiar route, the predictable rhythm, the sense that this was not just shopping but a pattern woven into the fabric of your life, a thread connecting you to your community, to your neighbors, to the place where you lived. Driving to a supermarket on the edge of town broke that pattern, disrupted that rhythm, made shopping feel disconnected from the rest of your life, an isolated task rather than an integrated part of living in a neighborhood. What was lost ultimately was community itself, or at least a particular kind of community, the kind built through daily interactions in shared spaces, through repeated encounters that accumulated over time into relationships, through the recognition that everyone shopping here was part of the same neighborhood, facing the same challenges, living similar lives, bound together by proximity and routine and mutual dependence. The supermarkets served people from everywhere, from multiple neighborhoods and towns, drawn by prices and selection rather than location. You did not recognize most of the people shopping alongside you. They were not your neighbors. They were strangers, anonymous as you were to them, sharing space but not sharing community, passing each other in aisles without acknowledgement, without connection, without the sense that you were part of something together. And while the supermarkets offered undeniable benefits, while they made food cheaper and more varied, while they brought convenience and modernity and progress, they could not replicate what the neighbourhood stores had provided, because that was not something that could be engineered or optimized or scaled up. It was something organic, something human, something that only worked on a small scale where people knew each other, where relationships had time to develop, where trust could be built through repeated interactions over years. What we lost in the end was the understanding that commerce could be personal, that buying and selling could happen within the context of relationship rather than replacing it, that economic transactions did not have to be anonymous and cold, but could be warm and human and woven into the larger fabric of community life. And while we cannot go back, while the world has moved on and the old ways are gone, we can recognize what was lost, we can mourn it properly, and we can ask whether all that convenience was worth the price we paid. So here we are, standing in your kitchen one last time, the groceries unpacked, the paper bags folded and put away, the week's provisions stored neatly in the pantry and the refrigerator. The walk home is over. The ritual is complete. And in the quiet that follows, you can still feel the weight of those bags in your arms, still smell the bread and the coffee and the brown paper, still hear the jingle of the bell above the door and the grocer's voice calling out your name. Grocery shopping in the 1950s was not just about buying food. It was about being part of something, about maintaining connections that mattered, about the slow, steady work of caring for a family and a neighbourhood and a community that looked after its own. The people who shopped in those stores did not think of themselves as living through history. They were just living, doing what needed to be done week after week, carrying their bags home, unpacking them carefully, cooking meals, feeding their families, and then doing it all over again. But there was something beautiful in that repetition, something quiet and dignified in those ordinary tasks done with care and attention. The butcher who wrapped your meat in paper, the cashier who asked about your mother, the grocer who remembered your name. These were not small things. They were the threads that held a community together, the daily acts of recognition and kindness that reminded everyone they were not alone, that they belonged, that they mattered. Tonight, as you settle in, maybe carry something forward from that era. Not nostalgia for a time that is gone, but something simpler, more essential. Slow down just a little. Notice the people around you. Learn a name. Ask a question. Take the time to make something from scratch, to walk somewhere instead of driving, to have a conversation that goes nowhere in particular, but matters because it happened. Because what made that era special was not the stores or the products or the prices. It was the way people treated each other, the care they took, the relationships they built through small repeated acts of kindness and attention. So sleep well tonight, knowing that somewhere in your own life, those same possibilities still exist. The chance to be known, the chance to connect, the chance to make ordinary moments feel a little less lonely and a little more human. History is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a paper bag and a kind word and someone who remembers your name. And that is enough. That has always been enough.